You know, I have been blessed with my public service, and this is what you really is. Something I learned from my dad was this. There are two types of people who want to get involved in government service. Those who want to be politicians and those who want to be public servants. Politicians see how much they can take from the people they represent for themselves, while public servants see how much they can give of themselves to the people they represent. So my goal always has been is to see how much I can give back, because I've been blessed, and I truly mean it. I've been blessed. I thank God every morning that allowed me to be here across the street in my office and then over in the Capitol building to work for you, because it's absolutely important that we do that. And I've really been blessed because being on the Energy and Commerce Committee, it is the greatest committee. When you're with other members from approach or Ways and Means, et cetera, everybody's talking about how great their committee is. But we have the broadest jurisdiction. We cover so much, and yesterday I had 4 meetings back to back in my office. Not one was the same meeting. You never get bored. It's always different. And the other thing about serving on the Energy and Commerce Committee is this. When you sit up on that dais, you're looking over the horizon 5 to 10 years. Because when I say looking over the horizon, because these are the innovators and the entrepreneurs that are coming before us to make sure that we have it here in the United States, and it's developed here, it's made here. And so we want to make sure we get things right. And that's why it's so important. That's why I always tell everybody, my door is always open. I've got an open door policy. I need to have people come into my office to see me. And I want to hear from you, because again, I can ask much better questions in committee if I've either talked with you or I've been out at a facility or something that you're doing you want me to see. Because, you know, the way it works in DC is the night before, usually whoever, if it's coming from the administration, from one of the departments, agencies, they send all the information into to the staff. The staff does a great job. They go through all of the testimony, they read it, and then they write questions a lot of times dealing with that. But the best questions are the ones, and again, I don't read all the questions either, but which you can get in there and ask questions that aren't in those written notes that they've sent over, because again, it's applying what's happening at home to what the regulars. I've had 2 situations in my office I've actually had this happen. I had to ask 2 regulators after listening to them for a little bit, because we had 2 big problems in my district. And I said, I don't want to embarrass you, but can I ask you a question? Have you ever been in a facility you regulate? And both times, you know what they said? No. And I said, how do you write a regulation if you don't even know what's going on out there? The one guy got kind of snippy, and then I had to say to him, do we actually pay you by the word? So that was kind of the end of the conversation. But it's important because, again, on committee, as I said, we touch everything. And I look at the Energy and Commerce Committee as, again, not only as the greatest committee, but where those innovators are. You know, I have been blessed, as Fred mentioned, and Jim. Where's Jim? Oh, there, Jim. No, you're standing in the back. No, I couldn't see him. 2 guys I've known for a long, long time, and I really respect them and all that they've done and with the work that they do. But you know, that was way too long of an introduction. But in committee, I've got a philosophy that we've got to get things done. In the legislative process, the clock starts ticking down on us the second we're sworn in, and I have got to get work done. Because I don't want to look in the mirror in 10 years and 20 years and say, what in the name of so was I doing in all that time? So it's important that you're all in so we get the work done. But you know, the other great thing about our committee is how things kind of blend together. You know, I'm very fortunate. I serve as a Communications and Technology Subcommittee Chair. I chair Digital Commerce and Consumer Protection. When Greg Waldman gave me that committee assignment, and he said, Bob, I'm going to do DCCP. I said, wait a minute, what? They changed that name almost every Congress. I thought he said, I said, wait a minute, did you say CCCP? And I said, oh my gosh, I have a red flag behind me now. He said, no, it's D. Oh, okay, great. I felt a lot better after that. But, you know, when I look at, especially what we're doing now in committee, how the work we got to get done, you know, everything from spectrum to spectrum management, to having the spectrum out there, spectrum authority, making sure when you think about, we have to have the, you think about the social media platforms out there and what's happening, what we had to do with TikTok. You go through all these different things that we've been working on, but they apply to who? The American people. And as I've been working on broadband management, you know, it's $42.8 billion that has got to get out there. But again, this is when you have to go back home and talk to people. Because first of all, I've been trying to find out how they came up with $42.8 billion. Because we never had a committee hearing on it. So one of the things I always ask when I'm back home is I was at a community college and they were working, trying to get people trained to be able to go out and deploy. But they also we had one of the folks out there from one of the smaller companies in the area. And they said, you know, we have another problem. Not only don't we have the people to get this deployment done, but we have another problem. We don't have the trucks with the buckets on them to even get up on the poles. So when I'm back here and you're talking to the people in the departments and agencies that are supposed to be handling this, I did ask them that question. I said, just out of curiosity, when this was written, you put the timelines in, did you all consider, did they have the employees at home to be able to do this? And number two, how about a truck with a bucket? You know what they said? No. It's not even a thought. But if you don't have if you're not back where the people are actually doing this and have to deploy, you're not going to get this stuff done. And we've got to get this done because, again, when you think about, we have about 8 million households out there that don't have any broadband or anything out there. Let's go back to COVID real quick. Go back to COVID and what happened? Everything shut down. Well, we had a lot of school districts do what? They thought, we're going to help the kids. We're going to give them all a laptop so they can go home so they can keep up on their studies. Well, there was a little problem in a lot of communities. They didn't have any broadband. So what happened at night? If the kids could get there, they went to the local library parking lot and sat in their family cars or one of the fast food chains where they might have had a Wi-Fi, and they sat there trying to do their homework in a car. So we've got to get this deployed. We've got to get it done. Other countries are moving forward and they're getting it done way ahead of us. And you know, back when we were in 4G and going into 5G, I'd ask this one question: are we ahead in 5G? And everybody said, oh, no problem, no problem. And then things starting to slip. And then you start to talk about 6G and who's going to be out there on the top? Communist China. And we can't allow that. Because we want things to be developed here in the United States, and we got to get it done. And so that's why I say when we don't have time, you know, and I can't believe it. You know, when you think we're 3/4 through this Congress, and then I always look back and say, what can we point to that we've succeeded in to help who? The American people. So one other thing, as I mentioned, when you talk about how things tie together in our committee, I was in a again, I serve on right now, and again, having served on all 6 subcommittees, but today I serve on telecom as the chair, and then of course with energy, and also on the health. But about 6 weeks before COVID hit, I was in a meeting. This is the honest truth. I was in a meeting, and this is what I heard: telehealth will never work. Telehealth will never work. I was on a Zoom call about 3 to 4 weeks into COVID, and this is what I heard: if we didn't have telehealth, we'd be sunk. But again, it's the deployment. I had Commissioner Carr in my district, just by coincidence, several months after COVID hit. We were at a company that did mental health services. And they said that prior to COVID, they had done about 400 and some telehealth visits. And just a few months after that, they said we've now done 16,000. The commissioner and I at the same time said the exact same thing. Wait a minute, what was that number again? 16,000. I go across my district, and again, as you pointed out, my district goes from Indiana. If you go diagonally, it's about 230 miles across the state. But a lot of my smaller communities, and they cannot get the mental health services out there because why? A lot of people don't want to live there. But how do they get the services out there? Through telehealth, and especially on the mental health side, it's so important. And you know, when you talk about on the innovation side, it was important because, you know, when you look at your phones today, this is how a lot of your health services are going to be developed. You're going to get them delivered to you in the future. You're going to have little pads and everything, and it's happening right now. So it's important we do that. And, you know, just real briefly on the other areas, on the energy front, we need more energy in this country, not less. And when it's fun when you can sit, I think everybody knows when they come before us, I'm going to ask them the exact same question. It's fun when I got to ask the Secretary of Energy right on down the line, do we have to have more energy in this country or less? And everybody said the exact same thing. We have to have more energy. If we don't have that more energy, what's going to happen? We're going to fall behind. But I also have 86,000 manufacturing jobs in my district. I have the largest farm income producing district in Ohio. And one thing I got to have is power. But there's one word I got to put in front of it. I can have power, but if it's not affordable, I'm out of business. My people aren't working in the state of Ohio and across this country. So when you think about what we have to have what we came up with in 2008, an all-above energy policy. That all-above energy policy says what? The federal government is not going to pick the winners and losers out there. It's going to be done by the market. And then and again, think about permitting problems that we have on the communications and technology side, the permitting that we have on the energy side. We've got to move forward on these projects. So, I could talk about our committee for an hour and a half, but I know that we want to save time for questions, and I greatly appreciate you all being here. And thank you very much for the honor, and once again, being here. I know that I was on a panel, but I said, oh, we're not going to sit on stools up front today. So, but I really appreciate it. But if anybody has any questions, comments, suggestions, I'm always open. But thank you very much for being here.
Well, Bob, just picking up on a couple of your themes, public service, urgency to get things done, and looking 5 to 10 years over the horizon. There's a lot of big issues in front of energy and commerce, and you've mentioned a number of them. We've also got a very divided Congress. So how do you work to get things done? I mean, you've passed 33 bills. How do you work bringing people together to get the big issues resolved?
Well, if you look at the Energy and Commerce Committee, I haven't seen the recent numbers, but I know when Greg Waldron was chair, and I'm not sure where our numbers are with Cathy because they haven't come out yet because of the end of the year. But 93% of the bills that came out of E&C were bipartisan. 94% when they hit the floor. So I'm not really sure again because those numbers haven't come out yet for E&C. But we've always been a very bipartisan committee. And we, one of the things if you're ever in our committee, one of the things that when we bring a bill up and mark up, it says the question is, are there any bipartisan amendments? That's the first thing that comes up. Do we have bipartisan amendments out there? For me, it's important because, for example, when I worked on the AV legislation, the 115th Congress, and I swear I'm going to get that done. I will get it done. But we had over 300 staff meetings on that alone, and I worked with the Democrats and back and forth, what could we do to make this bill better to move it across the finish line? So it's, you have to sit down, you have to listen to people, and there's certain things you just have to say that I can't get there, but what can we hopefully get to a point where we can all work together on it. On the complicated piece of legislation, years ago, if anybody remembers the track and trace legislation that went through, and that dealt with the manufacture of a drug from the time it was manufactured to the time it got to the local drugstore, and knowing where it was all the way, it had been being worked on, I think, about for 10 years prior. And they handed it to me, and I said, I'm not working on this for 10 years. But the first thing I did was, something I learned in the Ohio legislature was this: when our bills would come up, we'd have 3 hearings. It'd be proponent, opponent, interested party. The best thing I've ever bought for my office is 8 folding chairs. I get 16 people in my office pretty easily at one time. I brought everybody in. And I lived by a rule. I lived by 2 rules from Ronald Reagan. And Reagan said 2 things. If you're with me 85% of the time, you're my friend. And the other is, if I'd rather get 80% of something than go off the cliff with all flags flying. So I brought everybody in, and I said, listen, we gotta get this thing done. And I knew who everybody was, pretty much where their positions were. But I said, I want everybody to understand, I'm not gonna get 100% of this bill, but I think I would like to get. You're not either, but I want to know how we're going to get it done. And over the course of that Congress, we've worked it out, and it got done. So it's important that you work with people, you listen to people, but it's also important to show up at committee and listen with this testimony as we have the witnesses.
As Fred was saying, there are a lot of important issues facing the committee. So as the next chairman of the committee, what do you see as some of the early issues that the committee would have to deal with in the next Congress?
Well, and again, in the next Congress, I'm going to be, I can't believe it. I went on the committee in 2010. I'll be the senior Republican on energy and commerce, and of course I'm running for the chairmanship because it's something you want to do, and you want to make sure you get things done. But again, as we work forward on the C&T side, it's, first of all, it's getting that broadband deployed and getting it deployed rapidly, quickly, and also having the oversight to make sure it's done right. We want to make sure that, you know, we don't have any spectrum authority in this country. You know, we're way behind. We got to make sure, we got to move, and I hope that this Congress, we can get something done on spectrum authority. Permitting and on the C&T side is absolutely important. You know, it's crazy when you think about that you go through a federal lands and you're putting through finally like electrical lines, and it takes 6, 7, 8 years to get that permitting done. And what happens, you want to put up some kind of a pole attachment to those on federal lands, and you got to go through these, you start all over again. It's crazy. So you know, that's just on that end. On the energy front, we have, you know, from the nuclear side that I've worked on, especially on the uranium, that we have to have. We have to make sure that this country is North American energy independent, and it's making sure we get, you know, what we have. You know, when you go, I spoke down in Houston to a very large conference several months ago, and quite a few people from Eastern and Central Europe were there. They couldn't understand the president's ban on LNG exports. And so what they have to do right now, some of what we're talking about right now, we're going to have to support Putin's war by doing what? Buying natural gas from them. So we've got to make sure on the energy front, we got to get that done. On the other, you know, on the healthcare side, we've got to make sure we get the costs lower for patients. We have to make sure that we have delivery of medical, you know, for hospitalizations and everything. Because the last thing I want to see is our rural hospitals shutting down. We want to make sure that Americans are being able to get the treatment where they need it, and it's affordable. So those are just kind of the top. But I think what you have to do again is every subcommittee that we have, you have 3 to 5 things that we've got to get done. And those are things we just say, okay, this is it. This is what we're going to get done, and just start plowing into it. And because again, when you think about the hundreds of bills that are introduced, a lot of times, unfortunately, we can't get to them. Or in some cases, you could take some of those and amend them into other pieces of legislation that we can move forward on. But I just deal with time, and that's why I probably have 7 watches. But they're old. But I found my old one from college about 2 months ago, and I wonder if this thing still winds up and works. It does.
So following up on the next chairman theme, you have 2 issues. I have 2 questions. If you're chairman next year, how do you deal with House leadership? Because you'll be dealing with some controversial issues, and we've seen some recent things happen in other committees with chairman and the leadership. And also, you'll have 8 vacancies potentially. Who do you want to see fill those vacancies? What type of individuals?
Well, the first question, I really believe this, and again, I've been so fortunate because I'm what you call someone that wants to do things through the committee process. When I was in the state legislature for 11 years, and now my 9th term here, I believe in committee work. But I also know this: you do not operate in a vacuum. You've got to work with leadership, and again, when you lay out, I think it's important as a committee chair that you say, look, these are the issues that we're going to highlight, and these are the issues that we're going to pass legislation on to get this done, because it's absolutely essential. These are the things, because again, who knows it best? The people in the committee. And you know, if you live it every day, you better know it. And so I think that you don't live in that vacuum with leadership. And here's another thing: you don't live in a vacuum with the other committees. You know, we're going to have to pay $1 trillion next year just to pay interest on the national debt. That's something I've been following since 8 years ago when I was in the Budget Committee. So how do we, in the Energy and Commerce Committee, make sure that we can do things to help bring that number down on the debt side, and on the spending side for us to say, are these things as authorizers? How do we make sure we don't spend more money than we don't have to, or make sure we pull that back in? So I think it's 2 things you're working with. You have to work with leadership. You also work with the other committees, and finally, you want to work with everybody on the committee, that you want to utilize everybody's knowledge as they bring it, which is the other point that you bring up. When you think at one point we had 9 vacancies when Bill Johnson left, and when John James took that slot, we'd have 8. So when you bring 8 people on the Energy and Commerce Committee, it's up to the chair. It's an educational process. And what I want to see who comes on the committee, I want to see people that are going to roll up their sleeves to work. Not only are they going to roll up their sleeves to work, but this is a committee you can't do one of these numbers. Just before it's time for me to come down to ask my question, just appear and disappear. And that's it, be there for 5 minutes. it's important to be able to sit there and listen to the witnesses, because it's happened to me before. You go in with maybe a certain idea about a certain piece of legislation or a certain topic that's out there, but when you start listening to witnesses, you actually have to admit yourself sometimes. You have to say this, I didn't think about that. So it's bringing the new people on, getting them trained, because again, it's going to be a very short period between when they're put on the committee to January, and we're going to have a ton of work to get done real